What's good, y'all? It's your boy Schmug, and I'm back at it again with a brand new series that I'll be calling Schtories Wit Schmug. This is episode 1, my first 420 / my first time getting arrested. Yes, these did both happen on the same day, and it was definitely a day to remember. So kick back, get schmacked, and stay with your boy. This is Schtories Wit Schmug. Now, before I get into my first story, I do want to make a few notes, as this is the first installment in this brand new long form series that I'm introducing on my channel. So I will be altering a few names unless these people have let me know otherwise, for their sake and mine. And that's just for the fact that some of these people I'm no longer friends with. Some of my homies got careers, they got families, they got warrants, and I don't want to step on any toes. So for their sake and mine, we're going to keep it confidential. On another note, please do not attempt to recreate or reenact anything that you may hear in these stories, and I'm not admitting or confessing to anything you may hear in these stories. I'm simply telling tales that may or may not have happened in an entertaining fashion, so take it with a grain of salt and a puff of smoke. And my final note before we get into it, so these stories are not going to be told in any particular order. I have a whole spreadsheet of stories that I could tell, and I'm gonna get to every last one. I decided to start with my first 420 because it was legit also my first time getting arrested, and the day itself was absolutely ridiculous. So let's go right ahead and get into it. Now we're gonna backtrack to 2012. I was 15 years old, and this was good old sophomore year in high school. So by now I was already a well-established smoker, and my mom also knew that I smoked, and we had an agreement that I would only smoke in the house. Now, I mean, come on now, you knew I was outside smoking heavily with the gang, but that was our established agreement, and shout out to Mom Dukes for that one, because it was definitely a privilege that a lot of my friends did not have, especially at my age. So shout out to you, Mom Dukes. So I guess it should be noted that at this point in my life, I was living on Sackman Street in East New York, Brooklyn. I remember the address off the back of my hand too. It was 215 Sackman Street. You go ahead and look that up on Google Maps and tell me that building looks appealing. But I digress. I say this because I was at a point where I was hopping on about 3 different trains here in New York City to travel to my old neighborhood to chill with my friends, Syph, and even go to school. My high school was also in my old neighborhood in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. And I wound up moving away from here when I was entering my teenage years. I was about 13 when I was forced to move out of my childhood home. This is where my life got a bit shaky, and me and my family wound up moving around a lot as I transitioned through middle school and high school as well. And I'm definitely going to go into more detail about this period of my life in future storytime videos. So stay tuned for those if you'd like to learn a little bit more about your boy Schmug and his backstory. But until then, let's continue this one. Now, I remember this day like it was yesterday. It was a beautiful, sunny Saturday afternoon, and this is why I say it was my first 420. Obviously, I had already experienced one prior, but the one before this one landed on a Friday. It was a school day. Your boy was popped. I didn't have no bread, really, so I did smoke, but I didn't really have a celebration. This time around, however, it was a Saturday. The weather was perfect. There was no school, no interruptions, and your boy was on a mission. And that mission was to get schmacked with the squad. Keep in mind, I had a little bit of bread in my pocket, and I had a 0.5 of literal crumbs. Let's get into a side note. I was real big on making like makeshift smell-proof containers when I was this age. Part of this was due to hiding smell when I was in school or at home before my mom knew I smoked. So I had this 0.5 worth of crumbs in a dual air sealed contraption. Let me explain. So I had this plastic tube I stole from my doctor's office that I put the initial crumbs in, which is why they were ground up in the first place. Looking back on it now, this storage method was kind of ass, but it worked. So the 0.5 was in the plastic container. Then I threw this plastic container inside of an empty old pill bottle. This will be important later in the story. You'll see why. So I had this little makeshift contraption, smell-proof, solid. That's all I had to contribute to the Syph at this point. But we were going to go ahead and cop as soon as I got to Bay Ridge. And we did just that. And by we, I mean me and my homie. Now I'm going to introduce the first friend in this series. He's going to pop up a lot, and I am altering his name because first and foremost, we're no longer friends. It's all water under the bridge, but I don't want to get him caught up in anything in potential future stories. This one's really not too incriminating or anything like that, but for his sake and mine, we're going to keep it confidential. So this is my homie, Dimitri. So I actually spent a ton of time with Dimitri back then. I kind of got into smoking at the same time he did, so a lot of our adventures happened together back when we were younger. And it was my plan to link him first and then link up with some of our other friends later on in the day. Me and him linked up super early. I think it was like noon at this point. I was eager. I was eager to get the 420 started. I was ready. I had the 0.5 of the crumbs. I had some bread in my pocket. And it was supposed to be a good day. Didn't go as planned, however, but the first half wasn't that bad. I get off the R train at Bay Ridge Avenue and make my way to link Dimitri. We met up a block away from the train station, and then we made our way to our homie Tony's crib. Now, Tony is another addition to this story. His name has been altered for confidentiality purposes. I don't know if he really cares about whether or not I use his name, but I haven't confirmed that with him yet. So until further notice, this is Tony. Now, Tony was our go-to plug at this time. He had pure gas, the freshest flower, the best flavors. I don't know who he was tapped in with, but they were definitely blessing him. So Tony's deal for this 420 was 4.2 grams for $42 on 420. I will never forget that number, bro. It was his like special going on, and I'm not gonna lie, it may sound steep to you now, but keep in mind, New York City was still very illegal at this point. We were all teenagers, and the going rate for an eighth of flour from your local plug was like $50 at this time. So not bad for 420. You got a little bit extra for a little bit less. Either way, it was a pretty sweet deal, and after leaving Tony's crib, me and Dimitri were in desperate need of some roll-up. So we made our way to the friendly neighborhood bodega. Shout out my guy Gustavo, man. This store is no longer with us and has closed down, but this was our local plug for roll-up and alcoholic beverages. My guy Gustavo did not give two flying fucks what we purchased. He sold it to us as long as we had bread. His only gripe was no credit. But if you had money and you wanted a pack of cigarettes, a Dutch, and a 40, my guy got you. Shout out Gustavo. He was for the people. Anyway, we walk into Gustavo's, open the door, throw the bread on the counter, and we grab our White Owls. Yes, we were smoking White Owls back then. I don't even know if they make these cigarillos anymore. I'm going to try to find an image and maybe throw it on the screen for this video so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But yes, I vividly remember we got the gold flavored White Owls. These taste, I don't even know how to describe what these tasted like. They almost tasted like a beer to me. It was weird, but they were dirt cheap, easy to roll, and very accessible. We were learning how to roll Dutches at this point. We kind of had a handle on it, but rolling a Dutch is an entirely different process than rolling a cigarillo. Yo, real smokers know what I'm talking about. I still smoke Dutches to this day, and hot take, I prefer them over backwoods. I've actually never been a fan of backwoods. I think they're super harsh. The head rush is just a little too much for me. I feel like I'm really smoking a Fonto leaf. And don't get me wrong, I will hit a joint with Fonto in it or grabba as long as it's not too hot. But if your shit is spicier than a ghost pepper, do not pass the joint to me. Like, come on, or at least warn me before I hit it. Anyway, we acquire our cigarillos, and then we make our way to the quieter part of Bay Ridge. This is down low a few avenues by the Shore Road, Ridge Boulevard section. We cop a squat on a random stoop. Yes, this was a daily occurrence. We were assholes. We did this a lot. But we also didn't really have a choice, I guess. I mean, like I said, weed was super illegal at this point. My boy's mom was not on the wave. I lived super far. Any friends we had that could smoke in their crib, it was quite limited. So most of our sips did take place outdoors, holding down the blunt, ducking the boys, just trying to get high and have a good time. So me and Dimitri finish up our blunt, and lo and behold, my boy Derek shot me a text right on time, and it was finally ready to go link him and my boy Mo. Now, he was being the stereotypical drug dealer selling dimes out of his basketball shorts on the basketball court right beside my old middle school. Dumb play on his behalf, I have to say. Moving on. Now, the plan was simple, and I'm going to go into specifics. I'm giving y'all streets, avenues, cross streets, everything. I'm going to put this up on the video because I want you to get a visual and just see how close we were to our 420 scythe. How close we could almost puff it. That's how close it was. We were a block away from my boy's crib, okay? The plan was simple. We were all going to link up a block away from Derek's crib. Derek lived on 72nd between 4th and 5th Avenues. He was currently at McKinley Park on 73rd between 7th Ave and Fort Hamilton Parkway. Me and Dimitri were a few avenues down on 72nd and Shore Road, and we established we would link up on 72nd Street and 6th Avenue. We were going to go to the Ock, secure our roll-up, snacks, beverages, etc., continue down the block, go to Derek's crib, roll up some Lamela Andersons, and have a good scythe. The best scythe, the scythe of all scythes, a scythe that was then shit upon by the 68th Precinct. That brings me to the fun part, the moment we get arrested. Stay with me, it gets a bit hectic. And I remember this moment so vivid. My memory is ridiculous. This is partially why I wanted to do the story times in the first place. My memory, the way I pick up on shit, is absolutely insane. So, we're walking from 5th Avenue towards 6th. Derek and Mo have just reached 6th Avenue and are now walking down towards us. I swear, we're meeting up literally in the halfway point of the block. This man Derek is wearing a wife beater, bright red shorts, a fresh buzz cut, and a Marlboro Light dangling lightly from his lip. Yow, this man yells across the whole street. We already seen him, we made contact, he just had to get the yo out. Marlboro Light still dangling from his lip, he's hardly hitting it. We approach each other and I swear it was like it was on command. I reach in to dap my boy up. Marlboro Light still dangling from his lip. Yow, still being said. And all you hear is the skirt of a blacked out Dodge Charger driving down the street in the wrong direction. This was the first and biggest red flag. We should have all either got low or fucking, I don't even know, but we didn't. Instead, we watched 4 plainclothes detectives that were way too big, wearing shirts that were way too small, hop out of this vehicle that hardly stopped. He barely got the emergency brake pulled back before he jumped out the car. And they're already throwing their hands in our pockets. No badge on their neck, nothing. I wish I was exaggerating, and I'm actually playing heavy on the fact that we didn't even know these were cops at first. My boy thought he was getting ran up on and robbed. Now imagine he backed out some kind of tool. God forbid. He would have had a bigger charge. Thankfully it was just some pack. And the boys did have to work a little bit to find it. That was the fun part. Now, I'm not going to lie, in this moment, I was a little nervous. This was my very first run-in with the law. I did have weed on me, and like an absolute dickhead, I pulled it out of my own pocket and just gave it to him. I was like, yeah, he's going to find this shit anyway, I might as well just hand it to him. Word to the wise, let them work for it and find it. Because they almost didn't find my boy's weed, and it was not hidden well. Dimitri had about 1/8 in his pocket. He had it in the, the coin pocket, that small one inside of the real pocket on your jeans. That's where he had his 1/8 tucked away. Kid you not, the boys almost didn't find his 1/8, right? After I handed them my weed crumbs, they were still already in the process of all searching us. Each one of us had a dickhead searching us, so there was that. They actually let Mo go. He did disclose he was the youngest in the group, and I think this worked out heavily in his favor. They didn't even touch him or search his pockets. They told him to get the fuck out of here, and he got the fuck out of there quickly. And I glance over at my boy Derek, and there is now 2 boys on him, and they're getting a little frustrated. They're looking at him, and you can tell they know he has that pack on him. Derek was flexing what I like to call the Trap Star Special. He had 2 pairs of basketball shorts on, and for some odd reason, he was trapping incorrectly, and he had his bag of weed inside his boxers underneath both pairs of shorts. The point of the shorts is you're supposed to put the weed over the boxers, then the short, whatever, besides the point. Anyway, he was trapping wrong, but still a good hiding place because the cops were looking in between the shorts, shaking them, looking in the pockets, and they did not find his whole zip right above his sack. Ayo, it's a little crazy to me that they almost didn't find that. But it's almost like me and Dimitri noticed the same thing at the same time. We actually chuckled while we found this out because we both glanced over at him. While they're searching his pockets, you see the corner of the Ziploc just peeking out the top. Just a little bit. You could tell he was trying to push it lower so it wouldn't show, and he got just to the point where you have a piece of it sticking out. And right after we noticed it, one of the boys noticed it. And that's when it felt like shit became slow motion. He grabs the corner and mans pulls out the zip extremely slow on purpose, just for dramatic effect, and holds it up in the air. And he's like, "Oh, what do you got here? You guys going to smoke?" You fucking dick. Obviously, you know we're going to smoke. You know we're going to fucking smoke. But this is where we find out that this entire ordeal is Derek's fault. Derek, you're my boy. I got love for you. But this whole fucking ordeal was your fault. They look him in the eye and they're like, "Yeah, we knew you had this weed on you. We've been watching you all day. All day at the park, at the courts, at the McDonald's." I'm like, bro, what? He didn't even mention he went to McDonald's. They knew. I didn't. They were watching my boy all day from start to finish. Maybe don't go sell dimes on the basketball court near a middle school. I just, simple. Nonetheless, we hear cops, hands in pocket. They find his half zip and we know we're getting taken in, right? Here's where I said, remember the container that I made because my crumbs are in a smell-proof yada yada, whatever. I did note that this contained a pill bottle with the label scratched off. The boy looks at me and is now asking me if I sell or take pills because my weed was in a pill bottle. And then was astonished when I told him some real stoner shit, like, "Officer, I keep my weed in here to keep it fresh." He didn't know what to do with that, but he wrote it on the paper. He also wrote that I said, "Isn't weed legal?" on the paper, which is some bullshit because he started that with, weed is legal, right? And I was like, "Weed is legal," with a question mark attached to the end of my sentence. And he went on my paperwork and physically wrote, "Said, isn't weed legal?" So yes, you heard that right. Officer Cuck threw us a weird question, then tried to jumble up my answer and make it seem like I was being sarcastic or an asshole or whatever the case may be. Realistically, I think what it was is he knew he didn't have much of a case, at least on me personally. Like I said, I had less than a gram ground up in a dual seal makeshift homemade container that just looked a bit sad, if I'm being quite honest with you. I also genuinely believe they were looking for something other than weed and were disappointed to find out my boy was only carrying some flour. All of us. It was 4:20. What did you think we were doing? Regardless, they stopped us, and then this detective, in the same breath, was like explaining to us how he knew it was dumb that they were stopping us for this reason, and that it would probably be legal soon anyway, but we were still too young to dabble. Not something you'd think the detective would tell you after arresting you for possession of marijuana, yet here we were, here he was. And I definitely think this was due to the fact that they did think we were doing more than we were. Realistically, we were just 4 teenagers about to go get schmizzy at the crib on 420 with the squad. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing crazy, just a good time. And as soon as the cuffs were on all three of us, it was like a switch was shut off. All the fucking detectives immediately were nicer. They started cracking jokes. They were trying to be funny, lighthearted, whatever. It's definitely a tactic to just make you feel comfortable during the process. Don't forget, you're still arrested. However, they can make it a little more fun while you are. And they did just that. Keep in mind, me and Dimitri were still one blunt in, the one and only blunt we got to enjoy before this ordeal. And they started shooting off the jokes. They called in the paddy wagon to pick us up and take us over to the precinct because we weren't getting to ride in the nice fancy Dodge Charger. And the 2 other detectives that hopped out of this paddy wagon to take us in, I kid you not, the driver, this additional detective, looked like a spitting image of my boy Dimitri. They were joking that they were brothers the entire time. It was great because it really looked like they were. Maybe it helped us out a little bit. Who knows? It was definitely funny. I had a laugh. I was off the shits, so it was funnier. But back on track. Yes, you heard that right. The paddy wagon pulled up, driver hopped out, jokes were cracked about his similarities to my boy Dimitri, and we were then shoved into the back of that paddy wagon. Now, keep in mind, it wasn't a normal paddy wagon either. This was a D-boy paddy wagon. So the back opened up to a normal paddy wagon structure, but from the outside, it looked like a fucking work van. I'm talking about ladders on the top, dirty paint buckets dangling from the side. They were clearly trying to look inconspicuous. Again, I think this was a fucking whole operation for shit other than weed, and they just happened to catch up a few kids who had some. It is what it is. So they close those 2 doors. You hear them click, lock. It is dark as fuck in the back of this paddy wagon. And my boy Derek is just talking about how much trouble he's in. I feel him. He had the most out of all three of us, but this was also his first offense too. It was mine as well. And I don't know, like I was nervous at first, but as the situation unfolds, you kind of just accept your fate and realize, yo, I'm really arrested right now. It is what it is. It happened. The worst part's kind of over. Now you just have to wait and see if you get released or sent to bookings. That's a fun game to play. And we were dancing with danger every day, lighting up that pressure. This was a time before legalization where a joint, yes, a joint, would get you caught up with the law. Unfortunate times we had to live through, but here we are now, lighting up wherever the fuck we desire. And New York City has certainly come a long way. But before it did, here me and the homies sat in the back of a pitch black paddy wagon for a small quantity of the devil's lettuce. For what felt like the longest car ride also, if I'm being honest, keep in mind the 68th precinct was not very far from where we were picked up, less than a mile. It was on 65th Street between 3rd and 4th Avenues, and it felt like these cops took a longer route just to take their sweet time. But finally, the paddy wagon comes to a stop, the doors are now opened, and that is where I will leave you guys off here with part 1 and ask you what you think is going to happen in part 2 in the comments down below. This was part 1 of episode 1 of Schtories Wit Schmug. There's many more to come. Stay tuned for part 2. It gets even better. You know the deal, you know the vibe. It's Schmug himself and I stay high. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I'll catch y'all later.